Greetings. It's Thursday, May 29th, 2025. I'm Thomas Caldwell of the Aurelian Column, and this is the Midweek Report. Europe is descending into crisis again, and Germany has a very big hand in it again. We now know that the drone swarm Russian President Putin's helicopter was caught up in last week was an assassination attempt on the part of Ukraine, and that did not go over too well at the Kremlin. But what's making it worse is NATO backing Ukraine, and not just with weapons, intelligence and technical assistance of the kind that would make such an assassination attempt possible. Germany is now saying that long-range missiles it is supplying to Ukraine can now be fired anywhere into Russia. And this is something the Russians are not going to tolerate. Can you blame them? Many reports of a possible escalation to the point Russia will attack Germany, probably with those newfangled missile-mounted kinetic weapons we've been hearing so much about. All the fun of a tactical nuke with none of the radiation or the bad publicity involved. Yes, you heard that right. Russia is thinking, according to many sources, of hitting Germany. The Russians are still being very cryptic in their threats, but they're quite obviously still threats. And the Russians don't bluff. They have a history of not bluffing. Talks between Russia and Ukraine are not going anywhere, although both sides do seem that they do want to continue talking, which is a good sign. But neither side really seems to be interested in peace, especially the Zelensky regime. And if things spill over into NATO nations like Germany, that will drag the United States into the fray, and that is quite literally World War III. Meanwhile, President Trump has called President Putin crazy, which didn't really add much to constructive conversation now, did it? Although Trump thought he could end the war with a few phone calls, that certainly has not been the case. All he really had to do was cut off the money and weapons to Ukraine when he came into office, and that would have ended everything right away. It would have been over. But he didn't do that now, did he? He thought that just talking would probably be enough. Meanwhile, the Russians are making their intentions clear. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, who is now an aide to sitting President Vladimir Putin, put a note up on X that he only knows of one really bad thing in answer to some of the comments President Trump said, and that was World War III. Coming directly from the Kremlin, effectively. Yeah, that's not a good sign either. Now, something Mr. Trump obviously doesn't understand is that countries do not make deals or make peace based on personal relationships of their respective leaders. Now, if that was the case, World War I wouldn't have happened, because just about all the European royal families at the time, and Europe was run by monarchies back in the very beginning of the 20th century, all those royal families, those kings, queens, princes, princesses, and dukes and barons and everybody else, they were all related to each other. They visited each other. They went hunting with each other. They sent Christmas cards and gifts to each other. They made each other their kids' godparents. But a couple of things got out of control, and they all went to war anyway. And millions of their subjects died in that conflict, as well as the follow-up event known as World War II. Everything at that level, Mr. President, is about national interests, not whether or not leaders like each other or have lunch together or play golf. It's a bit different. And I hope the people surrounding the current occupant of the White House tells him that, and he takes that to heart. Now, speaking of war, Iran and Israel, yes, those two again. Don't think the government of Prime Minister Netanyahu has lost its appetite for bombing places and people, especially Iran. More and more observers are concerned Israel will start something up the United States will get dragged into, but that's been predicted for a while now, and it hasn't happened yet. But considering that Iran is an ally of Russia and things are looking pretty dicey there, you see the clear and present danger of a dust-up in that overall region. If Iran gets involved with the United States, Russia would get involved with Iran, and Russia is already angry because the U.S. and NATO are running a proxy war against Russia by way of Ukraine, and you see how complicated this is, and we don't have blood relations or Christmas cards and Christmas gifts in our corner for this one now, do we? Things are moving quickly, and the political and military landscape of Europe and the Middle East is changing almost by the hour at this point, so watch this closely. I am. And if anything major develops, I'll chime in with special reports as needed. And speaking of needless death and racial hatred, South Africa and the plight of the Afrikaner people, well, that story is remaining in the headlines, both in the legacy media and alternative media, the latter of which is doing a pretty good job of covering the story of white genocide that's been going down in that country for some time now. Look for more and more coverage of this story as it progresses, including from this corner. I've been in touch with people down there in the field, and I'm expecting to see some people get on some airplanes and go down to South Africa, in spite of the fact that the United States is issuing a very, very urgent travel warning not to go there. I wonder why the State Department doesn't want people going down to South Africa. Could it be they would get a different perspective? And all you need is a few camera crews down there to completely upset the African National Congress's apple cart. Let's hope that some of that does happen now. Not just the cameras, but the apple cart being turned over. It's full of pretty rotten apples, frankly. Now, back to the United States. The courts, the U.S. federal courts and local courts, they're at war with the Trump administration. Now, that's not really news. There's no surprises there, because within the court system has now become quite obvious is much of the power of what we like to call, or hate to call, the deep state. The latest blow to the changes the Trump administration wants to make to the American political and economic landscape landed just yesterday, and that was in a place called the United States Court of International Trade, which very few people probably have ever heard of. They blocked the Trump administration's tariffs from being imposed. You know, those high-end things to get other countries to make good deals with us? Well, they, for some reason, said that the Trump administration can't do that. Wow. The executive branch can't do what the executive branch is supposed to do. That's news. Now, this ruling is throwing a real wrench into the works, along with all the other court rulings against the Trump administration. It's building up an even greater constitutional crisis than we've already been seeing build. The dust hasn't even begun to settle on this one. So how Trump and his people will respond to this latest blow by the judiciary branch of our government, well, this will be interesting to watch. Now, this is where the danger really lies. At some point, the executive branch may just start ignoring what the judicial branch says. And that has happened before. The last time that happened regularly was during the American Civil War, when some actions by President Lincoln were declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. And you know what happened? Nothing. Old Abe and his government at some point just paid no attention, and neither did anybody else. That did end up more or less going back to normal at the end of that horrifying conflict. But there's no civil war going on in this country. There's no martial law. Habeas corpus has not been suspended. So how the Trump people are going to deal with this, and this is important for them. They really need this this carrot and this stick in dealing with foreign countries for economic matters that are considered critical to the future of the United States. How are they going to handle this? That will be something to watch. But again, the dust is still settling on that, and we haven't really seen much in the way of serious response. We'll see how it goes. If you haven't had enough of all the crazy stuff going on, I'm going to throw one more at you to leave you with this today. It's about artificial intelligence. Yes, AI. You hear that all the time. You see ads for it about new jobs, new careers involving AI, how it's going to change everything. Well, for good or for ill, and as I've made my opinion known on this development, I think it's ill, AI is already here. It's not something in science fiction. It's not something in a Hollywood action movie. It's here now. Has anyone taken a look at YouTube lately? There is now a massive swarm of AI-generated fiction, nonfiction, in the form of educational stories in both short and long documentaries, complete with graphics or video that's been pulled from other sources. People are now being educated and entertained by non-human entities with no clue as to who or what is behind the material that's being presented, or whether or not it's even a human being. With traditional documentaries and traditional fiction, there was accountability as to where facts came from, and they could be clarified. And a historian would do a documentary, there'd be a lot of money involved in it, but you'd have archival footage that was researched, you would have books that would be researched, witnesses and time, things such as that. But no, somebody's just pressing a button. And I've seen a lot of material in these that are completely out of context with the story that's being told, especially about World War II. Now, that might be considered window dressing, but if that sort of stuff is being done in the material, well, people are being now educated by AI, and AI has already proven it can lie, it could be deceptive, it's proven that it wants to survive. This is not good. This is not good. This is not happening in the future. This is happening now. AI is here. It's part of our society. It's not years or decades in the future. It is in front of us and staring us in the face. And whether or not it's pretty, well, we're finding that out. When a people give away their sovereignty to another power throughout history, be it government, religion, or some other entity, it never goes well. Surrendering your freedom, surrendering your sovereignty for something convenient or something that you perceive as safe, it always ends in disaster. But in the past, that was always a situation involving other human beings. This is different. Very different. And I have a feeling that machines will have less in the way of human compassion and empathy than their flesh and blood counterparts. So if you think of the worst tyrants in history, and you really look into their lives, they all had soft spots. They all had things they enjoyed. Stalin liked music, and he liked opera. Hitler loved animals. Mao Zedong, well, not sure what he liked. I know he liked to smoke, but you really do have to worry about this. And it's not something that's going to go away or going to get easier. It has to be faced, and it has to be faced now. So in spite of all the other crazy things going on in this world today, and will no doubt be going on even more so in the future, follow the AI situation closely, very closely, and start making plans for yourself, your family, your loved ones, your community. Making plans on how you want to live, where you want to live, and why you want to live. As this thing, and that's what AI is, a thing, begins to take over our world, in the form of a God that our ancestors could never have conceived of in their wildest dreams or their worst of nightmares. That's it for today. If you appreciate my work, please like, subscribe, and share. Share with your friends and share with your enemies. They need information as well. I can be reached at feedback@aureliancolumn.com. That's feedback@aureliancolumn.com. I'm up on X. My handle there is MICCAMPEN. That's MICCAMPEN. This podcast originates at Substack. My handle there is aureliancolumn.substack.com, and I can be reached there by direct messaging. Until we meet again, be good, be safe, be vigilant, and remember, Clown World and the Deep State and quite a bit of artificial intelligence must be destroyed. Good day.